Welcome. You are watching episode 11 of 90 Minutes to Close the Loop, the web series on glass collection and recycling. All aspects dealt with, and in this episode, we'll be focusing on islands. An island is a small piece of land, smaller than a continent, that is entirely surrounded by water. This means that by its very nature, an island is isolated and difficult to get to, which means very specific challenges when it comes to waste management. Estimates consider there are about 2,400 inhabited islands in the EU belonging to 13 member states: Poland, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, Estonia, Finland, Netherlands, Italy, France, Greece, Spain, Portugal, and Croatia. There are also 3 member states that are islands in themselves, namely Ireland, Malta, and Cyprus. And wherever there is a population, there is a likelihood that you will also find some glass packaging, fulfilling some basic needs in terms of drinks, foods, cosmetics, perfumery, or even pharmaceutical applications. The question is, what happens to the empty containers when they are on an island? Now, I may be wrong, and if I am, please correct me in the chat, but if we exclude the United Kingdom, I have the feeling there are only 2 islands in the EU where there is glass packaging manufacturing: in Sicily and in the Canary Islands, and we're lucky that we will be hearing from the Canary Islands in a few minutes. But it means that closing the loop, which is our shared ambition in this platform, may not be so straightforward for islands. Whereas islands nevertheless represent approximately 4.6% of the EU's population. But they can also represent very popular touristic destinations with major population increases throughout the year. To tackle these issues, we're lucky to be hearing from 3 case studies in Iceland, the Canary Islands, and La Réunion today. And after each case study, we'll have some time for a few follow-up questions. We'll then open up for a short panel discussion. And at the end of today's session, we will also be joined by a representative of the Islands Commission of the Conference of Peripheral and Maritime Regions, an organization that is precisely defending the interests of islands on EU level. Importantly, I would also like to introduce you to yourselves. You were a little over 120 to register for this event, and in the history of our series, I believe it's the first time Portugal is not the #1 country. This time it's Germany, but we also have people coming from many different islands. So a special welcome to you in Malta, Aruba, Kirk, Azores, Iceland, and Ireland. We also have a strong interest from the glass manufacturing sector and supply chain, and great to have also an interest from the waste management sector, EPR schemes, as well as from public authorities. So in the spirit of Close the Glass Loop, please do not hesitate to raise your questions in the Q&A. Send us your comments in the chat. I will be monitoring all of this and making the link with our speakers today. We want to make sure these sessions are informative and interactive. So to get us started, I'd like to go from north to south. So we'll first go to Iceland, and we'll be hearing from Sandra Johansdottir. She is the CEO of the Icelandic Recycling Fund. I'll say it in the English way because the other one is a little bit more complicated. Sandra, welcome to the show, and please take us away. Tell us something about glass collection and recycling in Iceland.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I would like to start to thank for this opportunity to share with you the journey of Icelandic recycling initiatives with a special focus on closing the glass loop and advancing sustainable practices, but also to learn from all of you best practices in the field of this work. I'm going to begin with sharing some fundamentals about the Icelandic Recycling Fund and its role, so you can better understand how we operate before focusing on the glass recycling challenges Iceland is facing. So, at its core, the Icelandic Recycling Fund is dedicated to creating sustainable and economic incentives that contribute to circular economy, with an emphasis on value creation and the transformation of waste into raw materials. The fund has been instrumental in driving positive change in Iceland's waste management landscape. The journey towards sustainable recycling in Iceland began with the enactment of the Icelandic recycling fee legislation in 2002. This legislation laid the groundwork for efficient fee collection and accountability, ensuring that industry and government collaborate effectively in the recovery of waste materials. Additionally, the agreement between industry stakeholders and the government outlined an economic framework for recovery of waste, with industry taking responsibility for operational activities funded by collected fees by the polluter pays principle. Icelandic Recycling Fund is a government-owned agency established in 2003 based on these laws. The Iceland Recycling Fund board includes representatives from various stakeholders, including municipalities and producers, with the Ministry of Environment holding the decisive vote. The agreement had three main goals: build a system for efficient collection of fees, avoid free riders, and make industry responsible for the operation. Fees collected are reinvested into activities such as handling at collection points, transportation, and the recovery of disposal of hazardous waste. In 2023, new legislation was implemented, making separate household collection mandatory. That is also covered by the fees collected for packaging. Efficient fee collection mechanisms are crucial for the functioning of the fund. It is essential to avoid free riders and ensure that stakeholders contribute their fair share towards waste recovery and recycling efforts. The fund has entered into numerous agreements with individual manufacturing companies and branches to streamline recovery efforts across various sectors. These agreements have facilitated the efficient management of waste materials and strengthened the extended supply chain or cycle. The fund operates EPR systems for around 20 categories of materials. The EPR scheme for packaging was only responsible for plastic and paper until 2023, when packaging for glass, wood, and metal was included. The fund charges manufacturers and importers with a recycling fee and customs on imported goods and through an excise tax on domestic products, directing these fees toward enhancing the recycling efforts through standard contracts with waste management companies. It's important to emphasize that the Icelandic Recycling Fund operates within an extended supply chain or cycle now, and does not assume ownership of waste materials. Instead, it works in close collaboration with waste management companies, utilizing standard contracts to ensure transparency and accountability throughout the process. Central to Iceland's glass recycling efforts is the Icelandic Deposit System, established in 1989, which is not part of the Iceland Recycling Fund. Operating on national scale with 58 receiving stations, the system has achieved an impressive overall return rate of approximately 97%. Its main goal is that drinking beverage packaging is reused as packaging. Through the system, glass materials are recycled within Europe, contributing to the overall sustainability of the region. As you can see, the Icelandic market is relatively small, with around 12,400 tons of glass packaging put on market. Also, we don't have any glass manufacturers or glass recyclers on the island. Until 2023, all glass was reused as landfill at disposal site. So the Icelandic Recycling Fund, in collaboration with the Icelandic DRS system, decided to make a life cycle assessment for collecting and recycling glass packaging. The aim was to assess the environmental impact of exporting glass packaging by shipping transport abroad for recycling by comparing container versus bulk shipping. The main conclusion of this analysis is that it is environmentally beneficial for all environmental impact categories to collect packaging glass and transport it abroad for recycling into new glass packaging. Recycling glass cullet into new glass packaging instead of using new material for glass production creates significant environmental benefits. As all environmental impacts of collection, transportation, and sorting disappear, and the overall environmental benefit of the process is considerable. A significant milestone in Iceland's glass recycling journey was the implementation of mandatory household separation of glass packaging in 2023 that we are hoping to result in overall higher collection rate in glass packaging, but still remains to be seen. Waste management companies have been sending trial containers to Denmark that resulted to contain too much ceramic material to be recycled. So they are now trying to figure out more efficient collection methods. Despite these challenges, the environmental benefits of glass recycling are undeniable. As we look to the future, innovation and collaboration will be the key to overcoming the challenges of glass recycling by exploring new technologies, enhancing collection methods, and fostering partnership with waste management companies. We can further advance sustainable practices and close the glass loop. Still, closing the glass loop remains a complex endeavor. The low quantity of glass packaging poses logistical challenges for bulk shipping, prompting exploration into alternative solutions, such as using mold glass in asphalt roads in Iceland, which is being evaluated by the Environment Agency in Iceland to be, if it's going to be approved as a recycling method in reaching the target. In conclusion, closing the glass loop is a critical step towards achieving a circular economy and sustainable future in Iceland. Through the efforts of Icelandic Recycling Fund, legislative frameworks, and collaborating initiatives, we can overcome challenges and seize opportunities to advance recycling practices and minimize environmental impact. As we look to the future, hopefully we will continue to collaborate, innovate, and explore new avenues for sustainable waste management. I'm sure we can together build a greener and more resilient future for the generations to come. Thank you for your attention.
Perfect. Thank you, Sandra. And I understand that you were saying that the DRS system is not part of the Icelandic Recycling Fund, but I think it's just interesting, maybe just to go a little bit further on that and the coexistence between the two systems, especially as we're hearing a lot about DRS now in mainland Europe. A lot of different countries are setting up deposit return systems, but for one-way packaging, for recycling. Can you just say something about the DRS in Iceland? So are we only talking about a refillable system in Iceland? And how does the refillable system work? Are there refilling stations in Iceland, or do the containers also have to travel to get refilled?
Yeah, they do. And most of it is, I think, a high quantity, quantity of the collected is mold or curled, I say, and transported that way, and used to make new packaging more than
Okay, so
it is to be refilled.
Okay. Okay, so the bottles don't necessarily come back refilled in Iceland. I mean, that's not necessarily the case. They're just being
No.
sent away from Iceland as whole containers, let's say.
Yeah, I think that
Okay.
is the main way.
And then the second thing that you mentioned, which is interesting, is the idea of setting up a separate collection for glass packaging. And at the same time, you were saying that up until now, the glass has basically gone to landfill or use in landfill as landfill cover, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah.
And that's always a bit of a chicken and egg scenario, because obviously, if you don't have separate collection, it's difficult to go the way of recycling. And at the same time, when you don't have an obvious recycling destination, it's difficult to set up a separate collection system. So what do you think was the, let's say, decisive factor to set up this separate collection for glass packaging now?
Well, I think it was necessary for to closing the glass loop, even if it's not being recycled into bottles again. The separate collection is more important for the glass that is not within the DRS system. So I think that is we are going to have more collected from what is put on market, because half of it is in the DRS system, if we could say so, but the other half is going just or was going into just the into the waste bin without being sorted. So and now I think we have the chance to have increase the recycling rate for glass in total.
Okay,
but as I
perfect.
say, it remains to be seen, because this is it only started last year, so we are still waiting on numbers from the waste management company on how they have been, how good the collection has been.
Okay, well, it sounds like you're on the, as for Close the Glass Loop, it sounds like you're on the right path, and maybe it would be interesting to have a look at, if possible, to share this environmental assessment that was made on, because obviously this is also a big issue that we'll discuss later on, exports and transport costs and environmental costs, I mean, and how that can also correspond to closing the glass loop. So thanks a lot, Sandra. You'll be back for the discussion in a few moments. So I propose now that we travel south down the Atlantic. We'll stop in Gran Canaria on the Canary Islands, where Jacobo Gomez Domillo is meeting us. He is Director General of Vidrieras Canarias. Jacobo, can you tell us something then about glass collection and recycling in the Canary Islands?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Jean-Paul, for this opportunity to present the special case of Canary Islands, that where we have the complete loop in our islands. Let me introduce myself. Firstly, I am Jacobo Gomez. I'm the CEO of Vidrieras Canarias. Vidrieras Canarias is a company that it's founded in 1978, and it's part of Verallia Group. You know, Verallia is the first producer of glass containers in Europe and third in the world. So we take part of Verallia. Canary Islands, as you well know, are placed in the Atlantic Ocean, about 100 kilometers far from Sahara Occidental coast. There are 8 inhabited islands. The population is 2.2 million of people registered. And in addition, we had 14 million of tourists that visit us in 2023. The economy in the islands is mainly the tourism sector, but we have also some industry. The 6% of the GDP in 2022. The GDP in the islands in 2023, it was 54,000 million of euros. As I said, a part of the Canadian industry is the glass sector, And in the Canarian, as I said before, we have the complete loop. From glass maker to the recycling, going through the beverage industry, final consumer, and a complex logistic of glass collection. In Gran Canaria Islands, we have a glass container plant in Telde, 13 kilometers far from our plant. We have the recycling plant in Agüimes, in the south here. Sorry, the click doesn't work. Now it works. Yes. The capacity of the glass container plant is about 50,000 tons per year, which supplies all kinds of containers to our beverage clients in the islands and some to the market export. On the other hand, the recycling plant treated about 52,000 tons of raw cullet in 2023. Thanks of the ability of this, the total rate of cullet in our container is 72%. In Vidrieras Canarias, we produce several colors: flint, green oxidized, and amber. In green oxidized, we reached in 2023 the 89% of the total rate of the weight of the container. These are very high rates of recycling, and it's very difficult to find this quantity in other places. How do we work in Recicladora Canarias, the recycling plant? We work from Monday to Friday, 3 shifts. So we have capacity to increase more the quantity of tons. And we receive by truck the raw cullet from the 8 islands. The logistic collection of the raw cullet is quite complex. Ecovidrio is a non-profit company in Spain who are in charge of the cullet in all of the country, the islands included. So this company does all the logistics through all the territory. Canary Islands is divided in 2 provinces. The Occidental Province, Tenerife capital, with 4 islands, and the Oriental one with Gran Canaria capital and 1, 2, 3, and this small one, La Graciosa, that is also inhabited. From the Occidental province, we have about 6.6 thousand bins to collect all the cullet, and we collected last year about 29,000 tons, about a ratio of 18 kilograms by inhabitant. In the Oriental one, there is less population, so we have less bins, and we collected a little less. But instead, we have a higher ratio than in the Occidental Islands. The logistic of the 8 islands is quite complex, as I said. We take the different cullet from the different islands. La Palma directly by ship in open containers. Hierro La Gomera collected by truck crane and sent by ship to Tenerife before going to Gran Canaria, where we have the recycling plant. And from Tenerife directly by ship to Gran Canaria. In the Oriental Islands, from Fuerteventura and also from Lanzarote, by trailer by ship to Gran Canaria. Of course, all what we collect in Gran Canaria is sent by truck directly to the plant. In the left chart that you have in this slide, you can see the evolution of the collected tons by Ecovidrio in the islands in the last years. It's clear the COVID-19 impact in 2020 and in 2021. Nowadays, in 2022 and 2023, we are over the maximum pre-COVID that we reached in 2029. In this second chart is the tons treated by our plant, by our recycle plant. And you can see that there's a positive difference between these tons and these tons. what we treat in the recycle plants is what we receive from Ecovidrio, but also what our clients send us when they want to change the refillable bottles that we have in the islands. In 2023, we treated 52,000 tons, and this quantity is steadily increasing. How we treat them with optical and mechanical systems, and what we have from the raw cullet. The 75% is cullet that is sent directly to our glass container plant. We separate in different colors, flint, green, and amber, and you can see the percentage of each one. We use 100% of this cullet in our plant of flint and amber, and we have an exceed of green cullet that we send to other plants that, as you know, we have in the Península Ibérica, to Burgos plant or Figueira plant. At the same time, we have not all the amber cullet that we would like, and they send us some cullet of this color. But this is an interchange of 6,000 tons per year. And this quantity can change each year because of the needs of our clients and what we produce. This second part is very interesting. It's 22.6% of the total of the raw cullet. That is the CCPs and the fines. The CCP is the stones, the porcelainics, ceramics, and the fines, the particles that are very, very small, and it's not very good to use in our business. So we send it to Ecogrid. Ecogrid is a company that is just beside our recycling plant, and we send everything, and they treat it to elaborate, to make the product to clean the boat's hulls, blasting particles. So we give a second life to the waste of the raw cullet. Not only the cullet, also what we don't want to use. Nowadays, Ecogrid is working to give other uses for asphalts and also for the small pieces that you can find in the swimming pools, the blue small pieces that you can see in the swimming pools. And finally, there is a 2.6% that is no glass, organic metal and plastic. Of course, the metal and plastic we send to metal and plastic recycle plants that they are very close to us, and less than 2% of the total are organic that we send to a dump. Thanks to this collaboration with Ecogrid, what we send to a dump is only 2%. 2 years ago, it was much higher. The future is encouraging since we have the possibility to collect more. We are about 70% of the total glass in the islands. It's a question of citizen awareness, where our politics and government, with the important labor of Ecovidrio, plays a main role to be more careful with our environment. Thank you very much. And if you want to make some question, I completely open.
Thank you, Jacopo. Thanks very much. You presented the picture of the different islands and all the logistics required to move the collected glass from one to the other. And I imagine there's a similar logistic system in terms of distribution of products. Similarly, products will need to go to these islands. Now, obviously, it's not the same thing, right? The value of a product and the value of the waste from that product are two very different concepts. But your example is a bit similar also to probably what we find in Greece, with lots of different islands, and you really depend on this sort of shipping logistics between islands to move the material around. Are there any thoughts on reverse logistics that you are using to optimize transport, or are these logistics dedicated to waste management? So are these ships moving around the islands purely looking at movements of waste, or are there any reverse kind of logistics that are being developed for these ships?
When we use the transports among the islands, or even to send something to the peninsula or to Africa, because we send our products to different countries in Africa, we always treat with these boats companies. These boat companies are very interested in optimize their trips, go and come back. So when, for example, if we treat with a company to send 5,000 tons of green cullet that we don't need and it's important to use in the peninsula, this company use a boat that have sent something to the occidental coast of Africa, and the return of this ship stops in our islands to take this cullet to be sent to the peninsula. And once again, they try to do a go and come back useful trip.
Okay, and the second thing that's interesting in your case study is the extended use of material. So with a glass packaging manufacturing site on the island, you are able to close the loop there and then on the island, but you can't do it all. So this recycling application that you found in terms of blasting for cleaning boats, how long has that been going on, and how did that happen? I mean, were you actively trying to find something that you could do with your material? Was it the company that came to you and said, well, we think that maybe waste coming from glass could be useful for us? How did that actually happen?
As you've seen before, the 22% of waste of the raw cullet is too high. And it is, of course, a problem for the dumps of the islands, and also is a cost because you have to pay for that. So it was an initiative of Vidrieras Canarias, the Recicladora, to find some solutions to this 22% of wastes. And the hazard with this company that is 100 meters from our company, we started to contact them. We started to send some trials, some product, and they improve, they proceed to profit the 100% of what we send. So it's an important step for us, also for them, and of course for the environment. The waste is always, there is always a solution. Even this EcoGrid company has some wastes. Each time they clean the hull of the boats. So they are working for use that for the asphalts, a third life for this waste.
Okay, interesting. Thank you so much. So a couple of things that we'll be discussing a little bit later on. So stay with us, Jacobo. And now we are going to travel south, go around the Horn of Africa and up the Indian Ocean to La Réunion. So we're joined by Tiki Massin. She is Overseas Operations and Recycling Manager at Citeo. So Tiki, you're responsible not just for La Réunion, but maybe you can give us a sense of how Citeo is supporting glass collection and recycling in La Réunion and potentially also in other overseas territories. Tiki, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Paul, and thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very glad to be among you today. So, yes, we're going to carry on the case studies with La Réunion and how we make glass collection and recycling. Maybe as an introduction, a few words about Citeo. So Citeo is linked to what is called, and what you know is extended producer responsibility. This is in accordance with the polluter pays principle, which was introduced in French law in 1975. And in 1992, this was enforced by decree. And that's the year when producers and manufacturers of goods that involve packaging decided to join forces and set up Eco-Emballage, which was a private general interest company to limit the environmental impact of packaging. In 2007, Ecofolio also set up, which was concerned with paper waste collection and recycling. And in 2017, Citeo was created as a merger of these two companies. So in order to limit environmental impact of both packaging and paper waste. What we have to remember is that Citeo is a private company, but it has a general interest mission. It's a non-profit and it operates under French government approval nationally. So what is Citeo in the overseas territories? Well, first of all, French overseas territories that are concerned with the polluter pays principle are these 7 territories that you can see on the screen. There are 5 in the Atlantic Ocean, which are Saint-Pierre and Miquelon, up north next to Canada. In the Caribbean, you've got Saint-Martin, la Guadeloupe, la Martinique, and in the South American continent, the French Guyane, and in the Indian Ocean, Mayotte and La Réunion, which is going to be our case study today. The 3 main missions of Citeo in these territories are, first of all, to organize in collaboration with the local communities the collection, sorting, and processing of packaging and paper waste. So that the performance is improved, the amount of glass that you actually collect and recycle, and also at a good price, at a rational price. The second mission is to manage research programs in order to develop eco-design and also to help develop industrial processes throughout the recycling chain. And the third one is to inform and raise public awareness of sorting used packaging and paper. And it's very important because obviously it's the first step of the chain, the citizens sorting their waste. If we look at the Réunion Islands, I've put a map here on the screen. This is a territory that is one unique island that is about 860,000 inhabitants and 2,500 square kilometers. And so, as you can see, the population is mainly concentrated on the outskirts of the territory because on the middle, it's mainly mountains. The 2 main cities are up north, Saint-Denis, which is also where, for instance, you've got the airport, and in the south, you've got Saint-Pierre. And you've got also on the northwest, Le Port, which is the city where the port activity happens and all the import and export activity. So selective collection of glass was introduced in this territory in 2002. And when we talk about household glass packaging waste, we talk about bottles of glass and pots of glass. This represents about 15 tons of glass recycled. That was the figure in 2002. And this is about 18.5 kilos per inhabitant per annum. So how do we manage to collect all this glass in the island? As I said before, we work in collaboration with local communities that install and collect drop-off containers, such as the ones that you can see on the screen. There are about 2,000 of them on the territory, and this represents on average about 450 inhabitants for each container. The target that we think is good to make sure that each citizen have a device near them in order to be able to sort is for one container, 330 inhabitants. So we are still developing this in collaboration with the territory. So once you've installed all these containers, obviously you need to make sure that the public is aware that they are there and that they can sort their waste over there. So that's why we develop public awareness information campaigns throughout the year to do that. We do that through television spots, the radio, digital networks, and also displays in local businesses and the public transportation system network. So I've put here a few pictures of the displays that we did. We did these ones in collaboration with Titi Le Comique, who is a local comedian through this Nutri family that actually is going to give the instructions to the general public as to which packaging goes into which container. And we also developed an application, Le Guide du Tri, which you can download on your smartphone, and it's gonna locate you and tell you where is the nearest device so that you can sort your waste. So this is the collection part of it. Once you've collected all these 15,000 tons, you then have to recycle them. In La Réunion, 50% of it is actually exported to international glass making facilities, because 15,000 tons is not enough in order to develop a local glass making facility. As we've seen in the previous example, the figure was 50,000 tons per year for this facility. So yeah, in La Réunion, we are much less. So 50% is exported to South Africa and Turkey, which are the countries which are the closest to La Réunion in terms of distance. And the other 50% of it is actually recycled locally, thanks to STS, which is a local business that was set up in 2022. I've put a picture of the facility down here. And what they do is that they crush the glass into powder, which they call micronized glass powder, which is then used into concrete in order to improve its technical quality and abilities. And on the screen, you can see on the left side without, and on the right side with this PVM powder. The reason why it's not 100% that is actually recycled locally is that, as I said, this business was set up in 2022, so they are still in the process of growing and increasing their capacity to integrate more glass. And so we're hoping in the next couple of years that 100% of the glass will actually be able to be recycled locally. And to finish, we also, as I mentioned, manage research programs. And we did that also regarding glass. So here we worked through an experimentation on non-collective sanitation with ATTANC and CSTB, which are organizations that are active in this sector, to see whether we could use crushed glass waste in order to replace sand, the sand that is traditionally used in septic tank installation devices. So that's what we did in 2020. And the results were very good, because the conclusion were that we can actually do that, that the glass has the same filtration capacity as traditional sand. And so that's another direction that we can now take and push further in La Réunion or other territories for local recyclers that we want to develop and implement their activities in the territories. So yeah, that was the overview about La Réunion. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm open to questions, obviously.
Thank you, Tiki. I mean, that's a really interesting example, because you show also some research being done to try and use the material locally. One question that I would have on a more structural level is about extended producer responsibility, because obviously Citeo is a Okay, it's an important organization, has a lot of activities already on the mainland, and then you're talking about some of these activities in the islands around the world, which are, you know, a little further away and might have very, very specific challenges compared to what might be seen on the mainland. So I just also wonder, in terms of extended producer responsibility, how do you even go about, let's say, allocating budgets actually and allocating resources to these different kinds of projects? Is it all part of the same extended producer responsibility, or is it something that is linked to those producers sending sending products, to those islands?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, the way it's done nationally is that we work with each local communities, and per local community, we look at how many tons they can collect and recycle per year, and the amount that we allocate to kind of support these local communities for their recycling and collection system depends on this tonnage. So there's an amount in euros per ton that is recycled that is allocated to local communities. That's the case nationally for every French local community. In the overseas territories, in addition to that, the government also says that we have to allocate more resources to make sure that the performance in terms of kilos per inhabitant in these territories develop to match the performance in the continental country, basically. Right now, for instance, glass, I said it's 18.5 kilos per inhabitant. In continental France, it's about the double. So we have a bit more money that we have to allocate to make sure that the overseas territories match that. And we do that through supporting the development of the collection system, supporting the development of recycling facilities, communication, and so on and so forth.
And then the other thing that's interesting in your example is the communication aspect, and how do you develop communication campaigns that are, you know, very targeted to specific communities? Did that already have a measurable success? I mean, are you seeing already some results from that?
Yeah, it's a subject that is very difficult because it's always difficult to know what improvement can be allocated to the communication kind of campaigns, because obviously at the same time you develop other things, and so it's very difficult to kind of evaluate that. Still, we try to do that. So we do local surveys to see whether citizens have seen the campaigns, whether they understand it, whether how they sort now, whether there are new sorting citizens or old one, etc. And we do that before the campaign and after the campaign, so that we know, what would be the impact. And we can then, redirect the message as well, so that it's more understandable and efficient in terms of sorting waste.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So I think now's a good time to open the discussion. We can get our other two panelists on board, Sandra and Jacopo. And I think I would like to start with this question of, distances, right? Exports and imports, because I think this is really the key of the whole discussion for islands, whether or not actually you have glass packaging manufacturing on site. Now, Sandra, you mentioned this environmental assessment that you made. I would like to maybe start from there, maybe asking Jacopo or Tiki in a first instance. Or maybe I'll start with Tiki first. I mean, have you performed this kind of assessment as well? I mean, do you have a view as to when are transport distances justified to go into a closed loop and when they're not? Are there any studies that demonstrate what is that kind of tipping point, and what are the factors or drivers for that tipping point to go? I'll start with Tiki first.
Right. Yes, we did that. in two ways. We looked at the export activities and also at the local recycling activities. In terms of export, what we've seen is that it has less impact to export glass for recycling than to bring new glass products. And this is because, well, common sense would say that, you make whole containers of glass travel, thousands of kilometers, so that must have an impact. But actually, the transportation side of it is not that much, because obviously it's very optimized. You put a lot of containers and tons per travel. So this is impactful, but not as impactful as we would think. And so the more impactful would be actually the recycling process. Because recycling has an impact in terms of consumption of energy, water, etc. And so for this, the very thing that would be important would be the energy mix of the country where you actually recycle the products. So in the studies that we make, we've seen that it's more beneficial to export rather than to use new goods that wouldn't have been recycled. And we did that as well with this local business, STS, which I've talked about, who recycle locally. And this as well, in terms of climate change, is also more beneficial than exporting. So we try and improve also in terms of environmental impact.
And maybe Sandra, because you're in a similar situation, can you maybe also comment then on also some of the results of this assessment? And do you see any tipping point where transport of waste materials to be recycled in the closed loop is simply not justified, and one should prefer local applications even if they're not in a closed loop system?
Well, we need to do a new assessment to compare the landfilling site or making asphalt or making it into asphalt, and that has not been done, but that would be something that we would like to do, but the results are very clear that it's for the situation as it is now, it is beneficial to export it through transport. And still we don't have the results from the Environment Agency if it's going to be counted in the to help us with reaching the targets regarding glass to have it made into asphalt.
Okay, thanks. And Jacobo, I mean, in a way, you have another challenge, I would say. I mean, you talked about the 72% average recycled content in your production, which is indeed very impressive. But in a way, you might have the other challenge, which is to say you can only really use the secondary raw materials that have been made available in the islands. I imagine you will find it difficult maybe to justify the transportation of secondary raw materials from a lot further away. So your closed loop is really dependent on collection in the island, in the Canary Islands, and that is actually your limit. Do you see that as a big limitation, and how do you deal with that actually?
Well, first of all, of course, as we have the 72% of collect in our containers, we need the second raw materials that we import from the Península Ibérica. So first of all, we are working to increase the collection of cullet, raw cullet, As I said, we have still some possibilities to increase from 70% to 80, 90%. That will reduce more the second raw materials to import from the peninsula to the islands. But also, I explained before that we have an interchange between the peninsula and us with amber and oxidized green. And we have not enough flint glass to increase more the ratio in flint containers. So what we are doing now in Recicladora Canarias in the plant is to invest in better new modern optical machines that allow us to not only to increase the capacity, also to be more selective with the raw cullet that we pass through it. In fact, some weeks ago, that we worked with an old technology in the green cullet. We went to accuracy, and we had about a 15-20% of the cullet that it was green flint. With this new technology that we have already started to work, we have eliminated almost all these 20% of flint in the green cullet. So we will have more possibility, more availability of flint glass, and less green, because I don't have now the flint, because I selecting better. So we expect this year to increase this ratio in flint because of these new technologies. So increase the collecting and be more accuracy in the selecting of the cullet.
Yeah, and you do have this link still with the Iberian Peninsula that allows you to have a little bit of extra material and not just depend on the material collected on the island.
Okay. We need something within something.
Yeah.
It's not possible. It's not possible up to date with some colors to do a bottle with 100% of cullet. You need to be some quality levels of color in the container that not allows to use the 100%.
Yeah, and we've spoken a lot about the incentive to separately collect, and we got the example also on the communications, for instance, that Tiki showed. I would just also like to explore the other side of the scenario, which is landfill policy and disposal policy on islands, because I would imagine that an island which has difficulty in transporting material, no closed loop on the island. Might find it difficult to develop a system like we've seen in Iceland. I mean, it's not easy to develop a separate collection in those circumstances, and therefore you would have a disposal policy that would somehow, allow for waste to be managed. That could, for instance, be landfill, access to landfill. So the question is access to landfill different on islands than on mainland? So are the policies different? Is the access to the landfill different? Are there different thresholds? And is that encouraging or not to introduce separate collection? Maybe just to hear Sandra on that first, like what is actually landfill policy in Iceland? And how do you see that influencing the fact that separate collection was not established until recently in Iceland?
Well, I think that the incentive is to reach the targets. So, but landfill, I mean, it's not a recycling method. It's more like reuse of the material. So it doesn't account as a to reach the target. So that's why. So that's the threshold, really. So we don't want to have it in landfill anymore. We want to be able to take it into the into the recycling process. And through a separate collection, it's well, you will get hopefully more material, more of the glass material to send for recycling. So I think that's the main target.
In La Réunion versus France, mainland, let's say, are there differences in landfill policies? And is it more or less easy to send material to landfill? And does that more or less have an influence on the performance of separate collection?
Well, the policy that is implemented in France is through what we call the TGAP, which is the general tax for polluting activities. So everything that goes into landfill or incineration, the local community has to pay more. So that's kind of an incentive not to do it. In the islands, it's a bit different because you don't have as many facilities that can recycle as we see. So this tax is a bit reduced, but still you have this tax. So this is an incentive not to do it. Another incentive that is not legal or economic is that obviously these territories are limited. As you said in your introduction, around it is just water and water. And so once you've put the population, the activities, there are not as much surface that you can, or superficie that you can use to do that. So the landfill facilities, they are getting, they are obviously increasing after the years, but they are kind of getting saturated at some point. So you have to find another way, for that as well. And the third thing is, as I said, the other incentive, which is not a tax, but is a revenue kind of thing or a subsidy, is that, as I said, for each ton that is recycled, you've got a financial contribution for you to develop your collection and recycling system. So it's a bit of all that, but the constraint is higher in overseas territories than in continental France.
Yeah, and I mean, you do need to have infrastructure to manage waste, and you may not always have a market for the material that you collect because of distances or because of low tonnages that make it more difficult to transport or to make it relevant to other markets. Jacopo, in your case, how do you see landfill policy influencing your activities in the Canary Islands? And as to your knowledge, is landfill policy in the Canary Islands different to the one practiced in Spain mainland?
I think that is not very different, the policy here in the islands. The saturation of the landfill is a big problem in general for everybody, but especially in the islands because we don't have enough surface to have this kind of installation. I finished my presentation talking about that the future is encouraging because we have the possibility to increase. Ecovidrio is doing a great job in this sense. The increase of cullet is increasing year after year. We take out the 2021 problem of the COVID. And it's very, very important, the collaboration with the governments, the local governments. In fact, this year we have had already a collaboration with local authorities. We did a journal here in this plant and in Recicladora in the south to awareness more the government, because it's very important to start doing new things to separate better the collect of the cullet, but also to increase this collection. Very, very important, the education of our childs in the schools. What we learn when we are a child, we never forget, and is something that you will do forever.
Okay, and one element that we've touched upon, but I'd like you to reflect on a little bit more, is the impact as well of tourism on the general flow of material. Because in general, islands will be seen as touristic destinations. Maybe not all of them, but a good number of them. And usually, with tourism comes all sorts of seasonal variations. You can have issues in terms of language and communication to various types of population, and sometimes you will have more tourists than population living locally, right? So a big imbalance in the type of people using these collection systems. How much does tourism actually impact your activities? Sandra, in Iceland, I mean, are there big seasonal variations? I imagine that the summer months will be much more prone to tourism than the wilder northern, the wilder winter months. But do you see a lot of difference in seasonal variation, and that might make it actually also quite hard to manage the collection system?
Yes, that is correct. We have the tourist season is from May until September, the high season. That this is something that we are still waiting for the amount of glass that was collected last year from the waste management company. So it will be very interesting to see if the glass, because of the separate sorting, how it's affecting the tourism. Because there is of course this problem with tourism that they often do not take part in the collection system. So there is more of general waste coming from tourism than from like a typical household. So and that is a challenge I think the municipalities are facing, how to get tourists to take part in this separate collection. So
and maybe just to clarify one point in relation to tourism, which is the hospitality sector. So the hotels, the cafes, the restaurants that will be typically using glass packaging. Are the products that they are using typically part of the refillable DRS system, or do they have new obligations since 2023 on the separate collection of the glass fractions that are not in the DRS system? So specifically, yes, the private HoReCa businesses.
Yeah, they have to obey to the rules that the municipalities set on collection on the separate collection. So what is not part of the DRS system is obligated to be collected separately.
Okay, so that's also new obligations on HoReCa operators being introduced in Iceland. Tiki, in La Réunion, I mean, are we faced with a tourism destination that doesn't specifically vary, that there will be a flow of tourists going into La Réunion pretty much the whole year round? So do you see any seasonal variation that poses an extra challenge? And maybe also a comment on the specific collection systems for HoReCa operators in La Réunion, if you have knowledge of that.
Well, yeah, as you said, La Réunion is a touristic destination pretty much throughout the year. Obviously, some periods are more and some others less, but that's actually the case. You can also see variation, apart from tourists throughout the year. For instance, at the end of the year, with the public holidays and Christmas, etc., and New Year's Eve, where you have a peak of glass waste. But yeah, as you said, the tourists mainly they stay at hotels and they eat and drink in restaurants, in cafes, etc. So it's separate from the household collection system. However, since this year, actually, the French government introduced a new EPR kind of sector, which is restoration, packaging, focuses on restoration packaging. And so we are, looking into that as well. Citeo has received government approval to develop this activity. So we are right now, making research and état des lieux. I don't know how you would say it in English. Looking at all this data that we can have and how we can develop a system that could, work with the one that is already in place. It's other kind of partners, because it's not local communities, or not all of them, but it's different businesses that we have to work with about that.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. And in the Canary Islands, I imagine the same, right? There won't be a massive seasonal variation, but Jacopo, maybe that's maybe you tell a different story. And also, could you maybe comment on this link collection with the HORECA sector? I mean, I think there are quite a few sort of resorts and things like that on the Canary Islands. Are these operated also? Are these making sure that the packaging is being collected? And can you say anything about the system that's used for these operators?
So in Canary Islands, 14 million of tourists throughout the year. We have a high season from October to March. The rest of the year, of course, we have tourism, but perhaps a little less. We have some impact with the amount of tons that Ecovidrio is able to collect per month, but doesn't impact on our activity. Perhaps the months that are lower are July and August, because perhaps they are in Iceland instead of Canary Islands. And we take advantage of this to give holiday to our staff, and instead of working 3 shifts, we work with 2 shifts in the recicladora. And in the part of Bixa and Vidrieras Canarias, we don't stop in the whole year, but doesn't impact the quantity of cullet that they send to us, because we work with a stock, and it's not important for us.
Okay, thank you so much. So to wrap up this little conversation where we've had a few insights on islands, I would like to just ask you to reflect maybe on a 30-second, 45-second basis, right? A very short reflection on what you would find interesting moving forward that Close the Glass Loop might be able to help. Right, because what we're trying to do is basically improve and increase glass collection and recycling, and that means that we need to tackle all sorts of local contexts and try and put that into a perspective of where it matters. Right, in this case, islands is the focus of this episode. But I'd like to just get a sense of what would you find interesting that Close the Glass Loop might be able to do that could help you continue to increase and improve your glass collection and recycling systems. Okay, like a kind of a recommendation or a thought or an idea or a desire, anything. 30 seconds to 45 seconds. Can I go to, let's start with Tiki.
Well, I think what you actually do right now is it goes into the right direction already. It's a case of sharing experiences and good practices and throughout Europe. So it able us to see what is done in different territories. I don't know if you produce reports or maybe not reports, but just what's it called? Lists of actors. Would they be manufacturers? Organizations such as Citeo, EPR, systems, etc., just like a database. So that, we can, after these episodes, which are very interesting and we can, discuss live, maybe, try and contact and, go a little bit further into collaboration with other actors. That might be interesting.
Yeah, nice, interesting. Yeah, sort of a directory of glass collection and recycling. I like the idea. We'll take that up. Thank you. Sandra, your 45-second desires and wishes.
Well, I agree with Tiki. I think that what you are doing here with sharing good practices is really important, and increase collaborations between countries, and also maybe share what's new, innovative ideas, and yeah, something that you could maybe collect some best practices all around the world in glass recycling.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll try and take that up as well. Jacobo, over to you. 45 seconds.
Okay. The mission of Veralia is reimagine the glass to a sustainable future. For the recycling, for the glass loop, we can say reimagine the waste for a new use. We can see before that it's always possible to give a second, a third life for our waste. And we don't must to stop here. We have other waste with the CO2, with the transport. We have talked about the transport. In Veralia, in Vidrieras Canarias, we also work for the reduction of the CO2 emissions with the photovoltaic kit, with new energy sources, improving in the development. It's very important to reduce all kind of wastes, not only the cullet, all that is around the cullet.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much to the three of you. We'll try and take up some of your ideas. Thanks for having been part of this and to share your first, ideas and innovations on glass collection and recycling on islands. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, in the last part of this session, and our three panelists have talked about this exchange of best practice and the importance to do this in a context that makes sense, in this case, islands. I'm honored to be joined by Claudia Guzon. She is Executive Secretary at the CPMR Islands Commission, so the Conference of Peripheral and Maritime Regions, which is very much in the business of getting, in this case, island regions to network and group and get together and defend common positions. And it will be really interesting also to hear how you talk about islands policies, right? Because we've been hearing probably things that you're not used to hearing very much around glass collection and recycling. I'm not sure you know what cullet necessarily is before you join this show. So you're definitely not coming from that background, but maybe you can illuminate some of us here on this side of the table as to how you approach European Union policies for islands, and some thoughts also on exchange of best practice. So please, Claudia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Paul. I think I should see I can see my PowerPoint at the moment. So first of all, indeed, thank you very much for inviting us to take part in this conversation. And of course, I have to agree with you. We are not a technical organization working precisely on glass recycling and glass management, but we are still very much interested in island sustainability and circular economy in particular. I may start with a short introduction about who we are. Perhaps this is easier. So just for those who don't know us, actually, the Islands Commission is one of the 6 geographical commissions of the CPMR, which is a network of around 150 regions from European member states and beyond. We also have members from non-EU EU member states, and we campaign in favor of more balanced development of European territories in general. As Islands Commission, we actually involve 18 European regional island authorities, which are located in different sea basins. So we cover the Mediterranean, the Baltic Sea, the Atlantic, but also the Indian and Pacific Oceans, including indeed also some outermost regions. And in general, we advocate, let's say, to get a better recognition in EU policies of the specificities of islands. So broadly speaking, we require a place-based approach and a tailored, let's say, approach and solutions for islands. I'll explain a little bit more during my presentation. We, of course, work together with our members also to represent and defend their interests in specific policy areas. And in particular, we are very much interested in cohesion, transport, energy, maritime affairs, and of course, climate and environment. And in this sense, also in our mission, we strongly promote interregional cooperation, as you were mentioning at the beginning, between islands, but also with other organizations and island-based organizations, which is our strong added value, actually, in general in our activities. And of course, there's no need to repeat that sustainability in general represents a cross-cutting issue for islands, and it's indeed very important for our work. Now, moving to the core issue of today's discussion, and after having heard a lot about really technical details, I would like to present a little bit the vision and the priorities when it comes to sustainability for our members and our organization. So broadly speaking, let's say. I spend a couple of words, first of all, also on the island's specificities. So as we all know, island economies are characterized by a high vulnerability. But despite this, we are realizing also more and more that the transition for sustainable and circular economy models can really make a big difference and turn, I would say, these some of the fragilities of these territories also into concrete assets. And this is something also that many European national, but also regional and local governments are little by little understanding. And over the last year, they have adopted also circular economy strategies that are better adapted to their specific needs. Indeed, islands economies start from a sort of disadvantaged position if we think of their additional costs in production, transport, logistics, etc. But also if we think on, of course, in the high dependence on the mainland in this sense. And to all these, we cannot forget also the high vulnerability to climate change and extreme weather events that also often eat these territories and have severe repercussions also in their economy. So precisely because of these same specificities, on the other hand, they can also be great laboratories for innovative solutions. So that's something that I think it's really important for our discussion. And I'd like also to highlight that the sustainable management in general of the limited natural resources in islands, this is something crucial to maintain a virtuous economy in these territories. And it includes, of course, a specific consideration of land, water, raw material, and their sustainable management, of course. At the same time, we also try to promote in a number of activities the nature-based solutions and in general circular economy models that can be helpful to reduce, let's say, the dependence, as I was explaining, on the mainland and on the external suppliers from islands. So to, let's say, better now focus more precisely on waste management in islands, we need to understand that this represents, first of all, a major spatial planning challenge, as we were seeing from the previous examples presented by your colleagues, because these territories have limited landfilling capacity, of course, and also a lack of economies of scale for the collection and the treatment of the waste. So here, circular economy can play indeed a key role. We know this from experience from our members. But among other aspects also, sometimes waste management can often be an important opportunity to foster employment in islands, and the development of initiatives in this sense can indeed make the difference in these territories, as it's demonstrated by the figures in general. And finally, I just wanted also to make a point on the link we were discussing briefly in the panel discussion just right now, on the link between tourism and waste management in islands. I think this is crucial. Perhaps it's not the case for all islands, but in many islands, the tourism is a crucial sector for islands, and it also implies a lot of high seasonality in the whole process, and it's also sometimes a high dependent on climate sensitive activities. So this is something that we need to consider. And the shift towards circular models, let's say, associated to tourism is essential. So let's say that this can provide effective solutions for improving water and waste management, but also using, as I was mentioning, nature-based tourism options, promoting ecotourism solutions, and of course also with an important focus on mobility. So it's a lot of different activities linked to tourism that are somehow also to be taken in due account when it comes to the waste management to some extent. And now I'd like to explain a little bit from our perspective as CPMR and Association of EU Regions, and particularly as Islands Commission, what we do. Well, we do pay special attention to any funding and investment opportunities that can be of interest to our members, and of course aligned to their priorities and needs also when it comes to sustainability and circular economy, etc. And in this regard, we can say that especially with the launch of the Green Deal, the EU has indeed provided and made available a plurality of funds. It has overall improved, let's say, the assistance and the initiatives to accelerate the green transition across the EU. Also put into the green investments in general as a core of its financial plans. So both in the multi-annual financial framework for the 2021 and 27 period, but also in national recovery and resilience plans. But on the other hand, even if, of course, we understand there is a lot of attention on sustainable transition, and it becomes more and more a priority, the issue is that sometimes it's a general approach with no specific focus on islands, with some few exceptions, of course. And as Islands Commission, we do stress that for a successful sustainable transition across the EU, we require adequate green investments for islands. And that's why actually we try to help our members in this process, or at least to facilitate and to circulate information on the possibilities they have precisely for islands in this field. Just one of our main objectives is this sort of exchange of knowledge and good practices that could be done through different means and through different initiatives. One of those is, of course, monitoring and making good use of funding programs that are directing in this way, also together with other networks of regions and of islands. In these latest months, we have seen programs such as Horizon Europe or LIFE that had specific calls on the topic of circular economy, bioeconomy sector. So, for instance, there was an Horizon Europe precisely focusing on this topic that just closed. And as Islands Commission, we submitted a specific proposal on developing circular economy solution in the tourist sector. That now this call is closed. But there's another example, for instance, with the LIFE sub-program on circular economy and quality of life. And we are aware that that a specific call on the topic of circular economy will be actually open very soon this month. And finally, also, I like to mention that there is Interreg as program. We are aware that Interreg Europe just launched a new call with a strong focus on green priorities, including circular economy. And last but not least, there's also an Interreg Euromed call that is going to be launched, I think, in June, with a specific focus for strategic territorial projects that will be targeting actually rural, mountain, and islands. So I invite you also to double check all these opportunities because precisely in this Interreg Euromed call, there will be a focus on waste prevention and reduction. So just to close, I don't want to extend myself very much, but I just wanted to mention that we indeed participated in a number of projects in the past and also currently at the moment on sustainable tourism. So with a strong link also on the sustainable planning of tourism activities, which somehow is linked to the sustainable use of and management of natural resources. Ecotourism sometimes is a part of the objectives and the planning of these projects. We are at the moment involved in a new project, which is Nature for Climate Change, which is about the link between sustainable tourism and, of course, climate change adaptation and mitigation. And then just to move on other type of activities, of course, we try to provide a number of opportunities for our members also to be involved in sustainable practices, both at European level, more on a bilateral cooperation or multilateral cooperations. This could be a number of different activities ranging from involving them in policy positions that might have been an impact also on the future EU policy making, let's say, which is the case, for instance, for the recent nature restoration law discussions. We are also trying to follow all initiatives linked to sustainable tourism at European level and engaging our members, of course, in this process. But we also supported some specific projects and programs of exchanges, and overall, we try to facilitate best practices exchange and sharing, as I was mentioning earlier. So I think I might stop here because I see we are running a little bit out of time, but I'm of course available for any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Claudia. And you also highlighted this issue of the spatial challenge and the fact, and we heard that also in the panel, that landfill sites just can't develop forever. There is a limit at one point. And that limit is then an opportunity as well to set up, in our case, separate collection for glass. In what you've heard, so here we heard really from operators getting very close to waste management, very close to recycling. In some of the programs that you mentioned of exchange of best practice, I mean, do you imagine projects where we could have, some public authorities and operators working on, in this case, glass collection and recycling for islands? I mean, would this be a kind of a project space that you think could be a legitimate proposal in one of these funding programs, particularly Interreg, maybe?
I think this is really interesting because for many projects, what actually the funding program are looking at is also the multi-stakeholder and multi-sectors cooperation. So this is an added value to have really some technical partners that are able to develop some parts of the project, and then counting on other partners that could be also EU-based organizations like ourselves or others, working precisely on the policy level. So it's a good combination, and I think it could be it could really bring an added value to have different types of organizations in a cooperation framework, such as the one of different programs that might be Horizon Live or Interreg, indeed.
Okay, brilliant, because I think that's something that for Close the Glass Loop, we really need to think about how we work with public authorities, because glass is usually the kind of packaging that ends up in municipal waste management. There are very few packaging glass that ends up in sort of, transport type of packaging. I mean, it's really like a primary consumption type of packaging. So the link with household management, waste management is really important. Claudia, thank you so much for having shared your views and your thoughts from the CPMR.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that wraps up our 11th episode of 90 Minutes to Close the Loop, where we looked at islands. I think that was really the thought that I stick with, is this notion that, there is a limit to spatial planning for islands, and we need to deal with that and try and push as much material as we can to the closed loop. Take into account some of the innovations that are allowing us to recycle glass, even if it's not in a closed loop, and maybe looking at some of the environmental impact assessments when it comes to transport of materials. Now, to close off, I would like to announce our next episode, episode 12, which is also the episode where we will be celebrating the annual event of Close the Glass Loop. We'll be looking at the recycled content of decarbonization. So here we'll be really looking at the industrial process and how we can increase recycled content, both in new products, but also in new furnaces, because there's a lot of development on furnaces as well in glass manufacturing. So we'll be on the 27th of June online, same place, same time, and looking forward to seeing you there. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you for your attention, for joining, and see you next time. Bye-bye.